Uh, Thank you. Let's do a quick round of introductions. Um, Ken, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Ken, I'm from Fauquier, John Marshall. Good morning.
Deirdre. Deirdre.
Good morning, everybody. I'm with John Marshall Soil and Water Conservation District serving Fauquier County.
Larry.
Larry Zerkos. I live in Fairfax County.
We don't hold that against you.
That's okay. Yeah.
Um, and a newest member of the group, Alana, introduce yourself. Tell us who you're with.
Hi, I'm Alana. I'm with the Rappahannock tribe. We've been working with Eldon to get the chief a seat on the commission.
To begin a process.
Yeah.
I don't have the power to do
Yeah.
that, but I have the power to facilitate a discussion. Um, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Edwards with the Rappahannock Rapidan Regional Commission.
Uh, Tommy, welcome.
Thank you. This is Tommy Blackwell and friend of the Rappahannock.
Brian.
Good morning. This is Brian Johnson with Virginia Farm Bureau.
Good morning, Brian. Bryant.
Brian Bays, Virginia Department of Forestry.
Welcome, Bryant. Okay, like I say, a couple other people had asked for the link, but we're going to go ahead and get started. What the agenda today is really an opportunity to kind of go over some key bills that made it through the General Assembly. And I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. All right, are you able to see this water resources and environment document? Now, this is the document I sent to everybody. It was updated as of 2 days ago. So when you see this status part here, they all kind of mean the same thing, but they may say something different, and I'll explain that as we go. And I'll just use this one as an example. This bill, the last status shown in the system as of Tuesday when I created this document, it showed as passed the Senate. So it's a House bill, which meant that it passed both chambers. What that means is it has not been signed by the President of the Senate, signed by the Speaker, and then transmitted to the governor's office. The deadline for the governor to take action on all passed bills is April 13th and at midnight. So you see, when you see here passed Senate and pending communication to the governor, that means they're both both of those bills are in that administrative process within the legislature where they haven't been officially transmitted to the governor, but they're still in the governor's review window, and the review window deadline is the deadline. Doesn't matter when it gets to the governor's desk. And all that will probably occur by the end of this week at the latest. Governor's got plenty of bills to deal with, so it's not like she'll be sitting around waiting for things to arrive. Okay, talking about the bills themselves, and let me say this: some folks on this call may have been engaged in some of these things, and if you want to add anything to the discussion, please feel free to do that. Let's see, we had a couple people join us. No, I think Pat was the only person. Pat, you want to introduce yourself for the group?
Sure. Pat Calvert, Virginia Director of Conservation for American Rivers, and I'm just catching up on what all happened during the session.
Um, well, I'm sure that you've got some perspective on some of these things we're going to talk about, so feel free to pipe up. Okay, the first one was a bill that came out of the Joint Subcommittee on Recurrent Flooding, just to make it the policy of the Commonwealth. This was carried by Delegate Bloxham, that we're going to try to make beneficial use of dredge material. It really does nothing more than that. But that's a good policy statement. This second bill provides that DCR shall give additional weight to projects located in low-income geographic areas and projects that incorporate nature-based solutions when distributing funds or loans or grants from the Resilient Virginia Revolving Fund to local governments. And let's see. HB 237 just requires the Coastal Resilient Master Plan to include recognition of the importance of protecting and enhancing natural infrastructure and nature-based approaches. Again, if folks have perspectives on any of these bills or direct experience, I invite you to pipe in, please. Brent, you want to introduce yourself to the group since you
Yes,
just
I
popped in?
apologize for being late. My name is Brent Hunsinger. I'm with Friends of the Rappahannock, and I do our advocacy work here. Thank you.
Okay, so what I was saying just a moment ago, as we go through any of these bills, if you want to weigh in, I know you were directly involved in some of them. If you want to add some personal perspective, please feel free. HB 388 basically adds to the powers of service districts that they can control invasive plant species. They can institute programs to do that. Because we're a Dillon Rule state, service authorities didn't specifically have that authority, so they couldn't really work in that area without the action of the assembly. And you see here, governor's action deadline, April 13th. As I said previously, and for those who joined late, you see some different status. Like this one just says passed, and that just means it got through both chambers, but it hadn't actually had the signatures placed on it and the official transmission to the governor. If you see this line, it's actually sitting, quote unquote, on the governor's desk waiting for action. So, here you'll see some of these, they all really mean the same thing. They're all in the same posture. They passed the House, the Senate, and it's now up to the governor. Okay, so Marine Resources, HB 390, Habitat Policy Oversight Committee established. And this is a new function within the Marine Resources Commission. Let's see. 397, Leader Herring directs DEQ and Air Board to establish and maintain market-based trading programs consistent with RGGI. And there's a Senate companion that's later on in the list, SB 802. HB 422, sponsored by one of our new members of the Assembly and new member of the Rappahannock River Basin Commission, Delegate Cole. And this just deals with prohibiting multiple rate increases within 3-year period for water utilities. Now, these are water utilities governed by the State Corporation Commission. So these are your private or quasi-private that does not deal with a Department of Public Utilities, for example, for the city of Fredericksburg. HB 507, another new delegate and new member of the River Basin Commission, Delegate McAuliffe, represents Loudoun and part of Fauquier. Prohibits DEQ from issuing air permits for any application submitted for a data center on or after July 1, 26, unless the emission limit for each engine generator established by such permit is equal to or less than the emissions achieved by a Tier 4 equivalent engine generator. Brent, you want to talk a little bit about what Tier 4 means for folks?
Yeah, I mean, Tier 4 essentially is just a higher level generator that puts out less particulates, is what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's less polluting. The big thing with this bill to remember is, I mean, there's a lot of localities that are requiring Tier 4 generators or the equivalent already. And this bill is not retroactive, so they're not going to go back and make already established or already approved projects retrofit. So it's forward looking.
The bill would have died had it been retroactive.
Yes.
Let's talk about this on a little bit grander scale. I'm sure everybody's read in the media the General Assembly finished their work, everybody went home, they got everything done except for one particular bill, the budget. And the hang up between the House and Senate now, those of you who know me well have heard this before, but I had the good pleasure of being mentored by a former member of the House of Delegates named Pete Giesen, who spent better part of 30 years on the House Appropriations Committee. And he used to like to talk to groups about the General Assembly, and he'd always say, how many parties are there? And people go, well, there are two. And well, what are they? Oh, Republican, Democrat. No. When it comes to the budget of Virginia, there are two parties. There's the Senate and the House. And it doesn't matter what political party they are. They don't see the world the same. And that's where we are relative to data centers. The Senate wants to repeal the sales tax exemption, which last year was somewhere north of 1.5 billion, approaching 2 billion in tax breaks for data centers. And the House and I think the governor are not quite there. So what the budget hang up is negotiating how to deal with an additional 1 point. So what that means is the Senate's 2-year budget has $1.5 billion more money than the House. And you've got this economic development policy issue. So they're negotiating that. One of the kind of related issues that's all kind of connected to this is this particular bill, saying that, okay, if you guys are going to be, playing in the Virginia space, and you're going to be getting tax breaks, then there's some things we expect. Now, this bill didn't tie it to tax breaks, but that's the kind of discussions that are going on amongst budget conferees. And so let's see. All right, let's move on to 512. This creating a new requirement on the Secretary of Ag and Forestry, the Virginia Farm and Forest Prosperity Plan, and this is supposed to be produced now in the first year of an administration, with follow-up reports each year after. Bryant, I don't know if you have any kind of inside information on forestry and y'all's role in this. Do you have anything to add? I put Bryant Baves on the spot.
Sorry,
Okay.
slow on the unmute there. No, Eldon, I don't have anything beyond that, but I'll certainly look into it and get back to you. I mean, we do have a utilization and marketing manager up at headquarters that, I mean, this seems in line with the work that she's doing on kind of supporting forest industry in Virginia. So I'll talk to her and see if I can get more insight.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it. And as a matter of fact, I talked to our good friend Terry Lasher, who is now the state forester, and he should be with us at the River Basin Commission meeting in June. He couldn't join us in the meeting next week because, of course, Environment Virginia goes on. And one of the dilemmas that the River Basin Commission faces is we have to pull off our first quarter meeting, which must be done by the end of March by the General Assembly's rules, after the General Assembly session. And of course, that puts us right in the middle of Environment Virginia. So we always have this kind of conflict in the spring. Let's see, HB 521, powers and duties of Marine Resources Commission relative to wetlands and a work group. Brent, were you involved in this one?
Tangentially, to be honest, Wetlands Watch, CBF more. I mean, really what they're trying to do there is coordinate more work on wetlands, looking towards the future and how we incorporate climate change mitigation, and really working on those as it says in here, non-vegetated wetlands. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see, HB 543 adds the Management of Forest Sustainability Fund to the powers and duties of the Office of Working Lands Preservation within the Department of Forestry. Let's see, HB 597 Wildlife Corridor Grant Fund established, and you can see what this calls for. We'll see how this plays out, and it does allow for voluntary contributions. I don't remember seeing a specific appropriation in the two first budget. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this one simply we needed to create the vehicle, like the actual fund itself. There's no appropriation from the state this year for that. It merely creates a vehicle so we can accept federal funds to work on these issues.
And it's expected that the primary source will be federal?
It opens up to receive those federal, yes, sir.
Federal and private. I think the focus is mostly going to be on private in the short term.
Okay, great.
Hence the voluntary contributions.
Okay. All right. The next two really we're dealing with streamlining some reporting, HB 747, 749. 747 consolidates the report on implementation of the Commonwealth's agricultural commitments to phase 3 into the Impaired Waters Cleanup Plan report. And the 749 amends the provisions governing the permit requirements for bulk line material to add a distributor who holds a valid license to distribute these products. And again, just some streamlining work. Nothing I see is significant, but there it is. HB 889. This is one that I think is worthy of paying attention to. VDOT is to create a work group that they're going to be looking at all of their highway corridors and making recommendations as to what, if any, I would expect it would be what, not if any, rights of way would be suitable for power line corridors, since we have so much demand for new power line corridors with what's going on with the energy demand for data centers. Statistic I heard late last week from one of our colleagues who's been working very closely with the money committee staffs and conferees, is that at this point, 26% of Virginia's generated electrical energy is going to data centers. And that's to me is a kind of a startling number, but and growing, I guess is a way to say it. So it impacts, not just power generation, it's also the distribution. So I see this as a significant move that we'll see more and more discussion of how to make multi-use of highway corridors, and what kind of impact is that going to have on design and location. Let's see. Excuse me, just a second. I have somebody just asking for the link for this meeting. Let me respond to that. But please carry on. Okay, sorry about that. With a commercial break. Let's see. Okay, the first of several PFAS bills. And I kind of tried to follow these, did not work directly on them. But Brent, you want to talk about this? Because there were a lot of moving parts. The House was in one place, Senate was in another, or specific senator was in another. And they came to compromise at the end of the day. And there were a number of bills. One pair of bills more focused on reporting, and the other on
monitoring and
management. Yeah, monitoring and management. Go ahead.
Sure. So there was this, obviously PFAS in general have been an issue. Not just one thing we really hear a lot about is PFAS and biosolids, but the fact is they come from somewhere, and if they're coming from the wastewater treatment plant, they're coming from some user somewhere to that plant. So essentially what there was a suite of bills that attempted to deal with both sides, mostly so this bill 938 from Delegate Clark has to do, if you read the summary, with trying to get some testing done from some different types of newer industrial users that are providing water, sending water to the treatment plant. What you will also see down the road here when we see some other bills, there was a couple of bills carried by Delegate Lopez and Senator Stewart that deal with when we're spreading those biosolids on the fields, trying to mandate some testing, some monitoring, and setting some threshold limits, as to for some human health and water quality. So part of a larger suite. This is the first one that we're looking at.
Well, let me kind of say that in a little bit different way. One of the important points of this one was dealing with the inputs to the wastewater treatment plants.
Correct. So, and I will say it's very important it deals with two different of the permitting systems. This one is more the VIPD's side of the house with those permits, and then the others are going to be Virginia water protection, or not VWP, but the other side, which is blanking on me right now because there's too many of them running through my head. So apologies.
Fair enough. Okay. This HB 952 provides that for the purposes of industrial stormwater general permit, nutrient reduction compliance, the term nutrient credit shall include nutrient credits generated by point sources subject to certain conditions. The bill requires DEQ to prioritize timely and appropriate enforcement action on any industrial stormwater permittee that fails to comply in 25 and 26. Also to convene a work group to evaluate and recommend conditions and requirements to address the nutrient reduction compliance going forward, and report back by November 1 to the key committees. Okay. 1072. This is providing localities the authority to actually do testing and monitoring PFAS for land application. And now the bill prohibits any expenses from such testing and monitoring to be eligible for reimbursement from the Sludge Management Fund. So, and you've got to follow the established U.S. EPA testing method. What's that test number, Brent? Then never mind. I thought maybe
yeah, there's certain tests. The whole point of this bill was that it's reaffirming what already exists, but it was felt that there was a need to reaffirm this power, which is allowing, as it says, localities to test for certain things like PFAS. DEQ, essentially, the word was DEQ had been telling localities they had the right to test for certain things like heavy metals and other things, but they did not have the right to test for PFAS. But obviously the Clean Water Act says anyway, so it was a reaffirming kind of bill.
Right. Okay. This next bill, 1178, deals with septic system inspectors. There is a companion Senate bill with this one also, but the deals with the reporting, but also if there's removal of surface material exceeding 30 inches, there it gives just identifies that threshold exists. Okay. 1266 deals with environmental justice in the permitting process, and it directs DEQ to reissue their environmental justice in the permitting process guidance memo, update it and reissue it. Requires DEQ to include a public town hall and comment process in that updating. And let's see, HB 1350, it raises the fines for violations of the Virginia Erosion and Sediment Control Program, empowers localities that operate the program to increase the fines. And you see that's pretty significant increase. And part of the justification was that violators were just seeing, an $1,000 fine as a cost of doing business. HB 1381 deals with groundwater management areas. Bioslurry is prohibited from being injected into wells within groundwater management areas. Okay, this is the next PFAS bill that Brent referred to. Delegate Lopez, the chairman of the House Committee on Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources. You want to talk about this one a little bit, Brent?
Yes. So this, along with the Senate bill, is the compromise bill from all the meetings that had been had in the months leading up. And this sets us down the road finally to making sure that we are testing for PFAS. So people might not know that biosolids are required to be tested for things like different types of bacteria, heavy metals, and other chemicals, but they were not required to be tested for the forever chemicals. This makes sure that now those biosolids will be tested at a quarterly basis, and that those results will be provided to the landowners. One of the big things was we were concerned that the landowners would not know what they're putting down on their fields. This by no means, well, never mind. This sets us down the road to where we need to be going on this. There's also a work group to help us set what the thresholds are going to be in the future to decide, like, okay, if biosolids are too hot, in other words, above a limit, they have to go somewhere and they can't be land applied. This also, Bill, will also help us start the process of figuring out, okay, as Eldon has said many times, if we're not land applying them, then what are we going to do with them? Because they either have to be incinerated or they have to be put in a landfill. Or I guess, there's also money to try and figure out PFAS removal technology is kind of a growing thing to try and figure out, okay, how do we destroy it with new and emerging technologies? And Virginia Pollution Abatement Permit, VPA permit, that's what I was thinking about. So you can see it in there, 50s and VPA.
Okay, Larry, you want to add something here?
Thank you, Eldon. Yeah, I just wanted to add that the limits that are outlined in this bill are very high. So the thing is that they're so high that they're not going to capture material. Maryland is done the same thing, but Maryland also has some guidance which is going to be directing their biosolids away from land application on Maryland properties, and we don't have that in Virginia. So I fear that there may be some bias towards moving materials to Virginia lands that might otherwise go to Maryland lands, and of course then you have DC. But I think that's also a big deal. In the end, the big worry I have is that if you have high concentrations of PFAS being put onto agricultural lands, grazing lands, or forest lands, they may be so high that they make those lands unusable for the purposes that were intended.
And hence all part of the debate. The key debaters were the Bay Foundation, the Biosolids Council, which is made up of ag representatives as well as wastewater treatment, large wastewater treatment operators, the Wastewater Operators Association. I didn't get that name exactly right, but who am I forgetting? Oh, goodness. Anyway,
the Farm Bureau.
Thank you. There you go. So those were the major four who were negotiating these bills. The Senate companion is Senator Stewart's bill. So one of the things that we're hoping to do again at the June River Basin Commission meeting is have a panel of those four organizations talking about the bill as finally signed by the governor, because this is passed, it's being transmitted to the governor. The governor is going to have the opportunity to send back amendments. I would not be surprised if we see some. I'm not knowing which way they would go, because it could go either way. So what we'll talk about at the June River Basin Commission meeting is, what is that final bill and what does that mean going forward? And I think it's fair. I would speculate that there will be a next step in the 27th session of the General Assembly. And I would further speculate there will be a next step in the 28th session and probably the 29th and maybe even the 30th session, because this is such an emerging issue. We're learning so much that I think you're going to see policy adjustments. This sets us on a path. we weren't necessarily on a path before these bills were hammered out. And I hear everything Larry's saying. I just come at it from 30 years of working around the General Assembly. Nothing happens but so fast. But when you see something like this that is an emerging issue, you're going to see um, uh, changes in each successive General Assembly session for at least the next several years. And I'm happy if Pat, anybody else wants to add anything. Okay.
Now, I know a lot of work's gone into this by many organizations, including Larry and affiliated groups for years, just to get to this point. So I appreciate it. Anything that the commission can do to get the governor to sign it, I think is appreciated.
Well, I think you've got the senior senator who sits on the commission will be encouraging the governor to sign it, or maybe even encouraging the governor to send back a more stringent amendment. Senator Stewart.
Hey, Elton, as Larry said, though, the problem will be that uh, if the levels, if we are putting the biosolids on the land and then they eventually determine, some threshold and those levels have been above that and now that land is unusable, are they going to grandfather that person or is that land going to be forever not in use? So it's one of those things you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
I and I don't have any response other than to say, yeah, you're exactly right. And hence the iterative nature of public policy.
Yeah.
Let's see, I thought somebody else had their hand up. Deirdre, did you want to add something? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a comment. It's sort of a situation of Nero fiddling while Rome burns. And 2027, I mean, for heaven's sakes, let's do something about this. It's not as if they don't have the information, and relying on EPA right now in the current political climate is certainly problematic. So that's just a little editorial comment.
No, and Deirdre, that's a good point. That's one of the wrinkles that the General Assembly faced. They're not used to um,
Yeah,
the
I know.
the lack of reliability of their federal partner.
Right.
And I guess hopefully I didn't get myself in trouble with what I just said, but I think
That is
I
right.
mean that presented problems for members of the assembly because they're used to leaning on that, and there's certainly some question as to whether that's a safe place to lean. Um,
Well,
and
you wonder yeah, defining what safe is, and I certainly respect your position and their political positions, but when does reality have to overcome political ambition? And if they take a look at what has happened in other states, it's not as if the information isn't there. So it's a little frustrating. So I'll get off my soapbox.
no. And look, that's the reasonable debate. And but one of the other sides to that very quickly would come up was, well, yeah, look what Maine did, and now what are they doing with it? And they're shipping
Right.
some of it to Canada because they don't have
And
landfill space in Maine. So
and
and
right.
hence the work group, which is
And
what are our alternatives? What are our reasonable alternatives?
And an emerging concern is also the probable shortage of fertilizer because of what's happening in the Middle East. And, here
And
you
you know
go.
what? That issue didn't even exist when the General Assembly
Right.
adjourned.
All right. Well, don't tell them.
No, because we don't want a full-time General Assembly,
No, absolutely not.
or at least some of us don't. The Okay. So I think everybody kind of sees the full debate there, and it will continue. Um, HJ 16, just continuing the joint subcommittee on recurrent flooding. And if you notice within this list, there were at least two bills that came out of that joint subcommittee that, okay, here is the Senate version of House Bill 938 that we talked about earlier, mainly the reporting and record keeping, but same language. And let's see, Senator Williams Graves 197. This allows the Community Flood Preparedness Fund managers to defer repayment and interest accrual until after the project or study that's being funded is completed. This again was a recommendation of the Joint Subcommittee. SB 293, specific legislation directing the Capital Region Airport Commission to figure out how to stop using PFAS by January 1, 2028. SB 386, dealing with okay, more on the PFAS topic, and this was Senator Stewart's bill. Senator Jordan, again, this was the Senate version of the House bill we talked about a little earlier that dealt with that 30-inch of depth and the 10 business day reporting period. SB 453, intentional discharge of untreated sewage onto land and into the waters, and establishes a maximum civil penalty of $50,000 per violation. Let's see, 553 deals with water use consumption data. Part of the problem that has existed is the confidentiality agreements that the data centers have been requiring on water operators that are supplying water, so they can't provide specific information because it's proprietary, trade secrets. This bill is aimed at trying to get around that by creating kind of a higher level reporting where they aggregate. So it's an attempt to work at that. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of many things that gets tied up into that whole data center discussion that's going on with budget conferees. I think as they work through how, I'm going to try to say this tactfully, how not to undo an economic development policy of promoting data centers that has existed for many, many years in Virginia and gotten us to part of where we are. Some people think it's wonderful, some people don't. Have valid arguments on both sides. As they debate that tax issue, to come to some compromise, there may be a number of smaller things that get packaged into the deal, and the data centers are being put under pressure to, back off this restriction on water consumption data. There are some in the assembly and some in the assembly staffs who feel like, why is that a proprietary trade secret issue? And so there's the back and forth between the data center coalition and some within the assembly on that issue. I think this will continue to be an emerging issue, and you're going to see more data available rather than less as we go forward. Happy to discuss that if people want to. It's all part of a bigger package that's going to get hammered out.
I can
It's
really
get hammered out behind closed doors and budget negotiations. So it's going to be a little bit of a black box how they get to the end of the day. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct. I would love it if I could sit here and say that bill is just going to get signed without any other things being talked about, but I think you're correct. So this bill, as you said, simply is going to make sure that water users, otherwise known as people who provide water to data centers, it could be a public utility, whoever, actually report the amount of water on an annual basis that they are providing the data centers. The issue of the non-disclosure agreements is, as you alluded to, is a major problem. Did not get solved with this particular bill, but there is already some things happening in the courts in Botetourt County around this issue that might move the whole discussion about the use of non-disclosure agreements and redaction of information in water service agreements forward, I guess. That remains to be seen, but rest assured, some of us will be working on that issue.
Well, on the issue of non-disclosure, excuse me, in public sector, Virginia really puts a high priority on economic development. And so Virginia policy has always leaned towards, okay, let's defer to the industry, the business, when they say that they've got to protect their trade secrets, when we're trying to woo businesses to come here or to expand here, or what have you. The other side of that coin is most of the water suppliers are public entities. And, that just doesn't quite feel right, if you will, in some circles. So there's a very legitimate public policy debate that this is bringing to a head. If the courts don't weigh in and settle it, hopefully they don't make it more murky. And then I think this debate will continue, and I think it's totally legitimate. My personal perspective, it's totally legitimate that this is not worthy of non-disclosure. But yeah, I guess there are others that certainly don't see it that way.
I'd say there's one entity in particular that doesn't see it that way. And
that would be the Data Center Coalition?
Yeah, and they happen to be the wealthiest industry in the world. So
yeah, but they've got allies in the Economic Developers Association and some others who just worry that we're gonna I don't know, kill the golden goose, for lack of a better way of saying it. I don't know what they're going to do when they put these things in space, because they're not going to be in Loudon and Prince William and Botetourt anymore. But that's a whole nother technology discussion. Let's see, SB 784 is the Senate companion to the House bill we talked about on injecting bioslurry. And HB 802, directing DEQ and the Air Board to establish market-based trading program consistent with RGGI. This is the same as the House Bill 397. Okay, that was kind of my list of key bills dealing with environment. There may be others, and if some folks think there's some that we should add to this list, I'm going to update this, and this is going to be part of the report that's on that agenda item for next week's commission meeting. I'm not going to take this amount of time to go through it. I'll just hit a couple high points, probably PFAS and a couple others. And but if you've got some other bills that you think I missed that were important that should be in there, please let me know. And I'm just going to throw it open. Comments, questions. We had some good data center and PFAS debates, which consumed an awful lot of the Virginia General Assembly this year.
Eldon, I'll just add one more that you might want to consider,
Okay.
and that is SB 531. And the reason I would add it is because I think a lot of us are worried about salt in the water, And so if you're worried about salt in the water, the more impervious surface you have, the more salt you're likely to end up with in your reservoirs and water and drinking water bodies. Uh, and there's some analysis from Virginia Tech that I can share with you if you haven't seen it already.
All
But
right. Are you able to see 531 on your screens? Or is it just not properly sharing? Hang on just a second.
I don't see it
Okay,
on
hang
my
on.
screen.
I'm gonna reshare and call that up.
But it's on accessory dwelling units, and so
Oh, all right. So explain the linkage of
so
accessory dwelling units.
the more impervious surface you have, the more
Oh,
salt you end up with in your drinking water sources. And so this is going to increase. And so one of the things I think about is we should be thinking about smart growth, and this pushes things the other way. Uh, and so it's just one more thing to be aware of.
Larry, if you wanted to stand up and oppose affordable housing in this session of the General Assembly, you would be putting yourself in harm's way in many circles. There
Oh,
were bills that were touted as affordable housing that were not, but because they were touted as such, man, they got lots of attention. And this is the continuation of a battle that's gone on for a couple of years. Accessory dwelling units certainly have their place, but some of the more fervent proponents are ADUs anywhere, everywhere, and that includes your additional impervious surface. But housing and housing affordability behind data centers, not very far behind data centers and PFAS in terms of consuming a lot of the General Assembly's time. And very quickly, I'd have to put on my local government hat, and that's a whole different debate. And so we're not going to do that here at the RRBC Commission.
okay. I just thought I'd make you aware of that.
No, it's an important bill. You make a good point, but whew, man, affordable housing was a really hot issue, and for good reason. Um, it's just that there were some things that were touted as affordable housing that really weren't
Yeah, there's better ways to deal with affordable housing, I think.
correct. Uh, I'll share that. Okay. Other
Evan,
bills.
was there any discussion at all about, I think we have five incinerators in the Commonwealth, but only two of them went up to the 4,000 or 5,000 degrees that was needed to destroy PFAS. And was there any discussion about of maybe trying to be proactive or looking down the line to basically either upgrade or get more incinerators that can go up to that level? Because I think the PFAS, it's going to be with us forever, and they need to look at ways in which to destroy it.
That was part of what's assigned to that work group. In the bills, they're supposed to look at what the alternatives are, and that included both incineration and landfilling more broadly. In the testimony and discussion during the bills, the issue that you raised was brought out more than once, and that maybe there needed to be there was some opining in that discussion of maybe there needed to be some state-driven process of of dealing with and it wasn't specific state did, but it needed to be bigger than a single locality, if you will, in siting and building an incinerator. And of course, that discussion quickly turned, oh, siting, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So Larry, you got your hand back up.
Yeah, so I recently had a discussion with a POTW, and we're discussing this very issue. And so there's a couple things here. One is some POTWs are already thinking about sending their stuff to retrofitted incinerators that will handle these higher temperatures. But the flip side of that is that they need to worry about EPA because EPA should end up issuing new requirements for the incineration of biosolids with PFAS. But because this administration hasn't done that and they're not even working on it, um, that is an issue because if I were a POTW, I would be afraid to commit to a multi it'll be it'll be hundreds of millions of dollars to do this at least. And so
Yeah,
that's a
what
very
standard do
expensive.
you design it to?
What's that?
Doug, what standard do you design the
Ex-
destruction to in order not to end up in harm's way down the road?
Exactly. So the technologies they were looking at would deal with four nines of destruction. And there's studies out there that indicate that you can get six nines of destruction. And so if you build something to four nines and it turns out not to be adequate, you've got to start all over again.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, right. And what has that done to your whole ratepayer structure? Yeah, we're kind of in a multiple dilemma, because it isn't just two horns. Um, so, um, okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And
Hey, Eldon, this is Michelle Edwards.
go ahead.
I have one question for you, and I hesitate to bring it up because it involves the budget. Is it correct? My understanding is that the funding, the extra funding for
Water supply planning.
RPUs for water supply planning is in the Senate's budget, but not the House budget. And I wanted to make sure that that was the case. And if
Yeah, matter of fact, the Senate fully funded the budget request. Much to the shock of some of us, the House put zero. So, there you go. But remembering the Senate's budget includes $1.5 billion plus more revenue than the House. So, something's got to give when they come to compromise. And it isn't going to be just cleanly, oh, let's split the baby.
Yeah.
Because of where the revenue's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have been kicking around the idea of increasing the consumption tax, but that doesn't generate. I've seen numbers that versus the 1.5 billion that generates somewhere between 200 and 400 million by increasing the consumption tax on the data centers of electricity. So there are a lot of different things that are I'm sure being kicked around, some things I haven't even heard about.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. And all of
No,
the
but the good thing you're in one side of the budget. That means it's on the table in the conference discussion.
Yeah.
That's a positive. Go ahead, Brent.
Interestingly, to Michelle's point, and I can promise you, Michelle, they're very aware of the House is aware of the need for this. Is that if you look at a lot of conservation priorities in general, they were either included in the House budget or the Senate budget. Very few that that we generally saw had both, like in each one. So that's one of the interesting dynamics, along with the tax incentive, is that so for example, take VCAP. That was one that they both included, but the House had 2 million and then the Senate had 8 million. So there's a lot of variability within what was requested, but the important part, as he said, is we got it in the Senate, so we're still in the game to try and get that funding. That's the important part.
Yep.
Thanks, Brett.
The challenge is staying in touch with conferees when what's going on is everybody's gone home except for the conferees. So how do you get to them? Unless you've got their cell phone and you can text them, it's really pretty hard. So and that's the downside. As a friend of ours here in this office, former budget conferee, likes to say, he says, I enjoyed it when we did this because everybody went home and left us alone, and we could go figure out how to balance the budget, and we didn't have all to listen to all the other folks. And he was being a little bit of flip, but he was also serious. Okay, other questions, comments, observations? Hey, if you have some thoughts on some things I should or shouldn't stay away from in the report I send to the commission, it'll be going to them probably tomorrow. I'd be happy, feel free to call or send me an email or text me or whatever. Okay, hope to see some of you next week in Spotsylvania, either in person or virtually. And then look forward to June, where we're going to have that panel discussion on PFAS, which I expect to be a pretty robust discussion because you're going to have the 4 different perspectives all at the same table, and they've all agreed to join us. And we'll have some other key folks. Terry Lasher may be able to join us as well. Of course, he's at Environment Virginia next week. So the state forester may be with us, and his boss, the secretary, may also be with us for that meeting. So we're working on those things. Anyway, with that, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Hey, thanks, Eldon.
Sure
See you
thing.
next time.
Yep. Tommy, how are things going? Tommy, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I've been doing a little substitute teaching, so I'm out
cool.
of class right now, but I'm still trying to keep up on things.
What are you teaching?
Well, I'm in anywhere from kindergarten to 4th grade. Can you believe that? It seems that's where I fit best.
Well, that's kind of like, grandkids.
It's keeping me out of trouble. It's the local school. I just wanted to see if I could help out a little bit. There's some needs here.
I think it sounds like fun, frankly. I'm
It's
sure
keeping me young.
I'm sure it's not dull.
It's not dull. Thanks for letting me join in today.
Sure thing, man. Take care of yourself.
Be safe.
You too. Bye.